well, this is dependent on many different things. This is dependent on that Hamas doesn't want to, but the fact that they, or the realization that they are actually capable of other things, makes you start to think about, okay, so how could they then be? I mean, there are a lot of other policy questions and reasoning that come with this. So, okay, so if there is a capacity, how can you push them in different directions? Or how can you, I mean, sticks and carrots, can we do anything from the outside? And you all know what has been going on for the past few weeks. In July, we all thought that Hamas was moving in a kind of a third or three-state solution direction of Palestinian politics, where they kind of didn't care about Abbas, didn't care about Ramallah, but started to talk with the Halan and interacting more closely with Egypt. And then all of a sudden, last week, or was it the week before last week, so Hamas is all of a sudden saying, so now we want to reconciliate with Fatah. We dissolve our administrative committee, and now it's up to Abbas to reciprocate. And Ramallah, on the other hand, says, we need to see some proof on the ground. We will not respond to you before you do something more, before you let the unity government actually govern, or let them to have authority in Gaza. And so this is where we stand now. The information today that's come out today is that so next Monday, Prime Minister Hamdallah will come to Gaza. But even though Hamas will let him in, it doesn't say anything about, up till Hamas actually concedes power in Gaza, nothing has happened. So they are still the de facto ruler of the territory, and this administrative committee, well, we're now just, when it has been dissolved, we're now just back to a status quo ante, where Hamas was completely in control of Gaza. So, to illustrate what I say in my book about Hamas being a flexible organization or a flexible group, I will, instead of using what's in the book, I will say a bit about what's going on now. So I'll say a few things about the new charter, I'll say a few things about the new leadership, about what is a new foreign policy of Hamas since the new leadership, and also about this kind of reorientation in Palestinian politics. So, first of all, the charter. How many of you think that the charter is merely a cosmetic thing on part of Hamas?
Cosmetic in what way?
Cosmetic in the sense, cosmetic in the sense that
they don't believe what is written
it's
there?
that it's a manipulative move on part of Hamas.
I think it's first meant for inner Palestinian first.
But if I change the question, do you think that it represents anything but political tactics?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's great, because many people that I talk to think that it's merely cosmetics. My way of describing the new charter, and first of all, it is a new charter. It's not just an additional policy document. The big, so we can discuss this later, the big discussion within close to Hamas circuits before and among analysts before the actual presentation of the charter in Doha was, okay, so would Meshal dare to call it a charter? Would he dare to embrace it as the actual charter? And when you listen to this press conference, he's super clear about this. There's no unclarity in how he presents this paper. He's talking about the rest that has been up till now, the rest of the documents as historical documents, and this is the new charter, and he used these words. And then there is a lot of content in this charter. So a lot of things that we hardly don't believe that Hamas would agree to. A lot of things about distancing itself from the Muslim Brotherhood, about 1967 borders and so on. So I would say that even though you would think that all this content in the charter is in some way cosmetic or in some way political tactical maneuvering, you have to think about that this document, to be able to come about, there has been a huge process for several years within Hamas, with secret communications between the 4 different parts of Hamas, even with Hamas prisoners, and they have all agreed on this, and they didn't agree on the original draft of this new charter. There was a lot of debate, a lot of infighting about what to have in it, what to not have in it. But the fact that they started this process, came out of this process a few years later in a full agreement inside, and those who didn't agree, they were kicked out. So Mahmoud Abbas or Mahmoud Zahar, he was retired. He didn't agree to this. He would never agree to this. Now he's no longer in an operative position in the movement. So it says something about Hamas. You cannot ignore this. Yeah.
Can you just mention what are the major points in the charter?
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there are several things. But so there is, for example, there is the Palestinian state on 67 lines. It's quite substantial because it means that, okay, even though they're not saying anything about Israel or what we will be on the other side of these 67 lines, they're saying that we will not have a Palestinian state on the other side. So you could argue that they're saying something about Israel as well here. Then they're also clarifying their language on the anti-Semitic language before and making it less anti-Semitic now. So they're talking about Zionists instead of Jews. They're also talking about minorities in Palestinian society, embracing Christian Palestinians and so on. They're recognizing the PLO as the leading body, which they have been doing all the time, but reaffirming this. They're also saying a few things about using violence. So in the Mithaq, they're saying that, well, we're not relinquishing our arms, we are not saying that we will never use violence, but at this time, it's not, we are not using violence because it's not the best way to advance the cause.
So basically maslaha?
So, I mean, you can interpret it in different ways, but at least this is what they're saying. And then they're taking the step to clearly state that they don't have anything to do with other Islamist organizations. I don't really know if they mention the Muslim Brotherhood. I don't think they do. They just say other Islamist organizations. So they refer to, of course, between the lines, to Daesh and extreme
Salafis.
Mm-hmm. But also, it's quite a big step in relation to the Muslim Brotherhood. And as we were talking about before this lecture, my view of Hamas relations with the Muslim Brotherhood is that they are overemphasized by analysts. They are not as strong as we tend to believe. And just take, for example, in 2013 when Morsi came to power in Egypt. So nothing happened. So Hamas didn't get its free trade area or zone in Rafah. The borders didn't open. The Muslim Brotherhood in power in Egypt didn't help Hamas as they expected to, the help they expected to get. So after this, Hamas was furious. They expected a completely different outcome of this.
But ideologically, they are the Muslim Brothers.
Yes.
Hamas.
Yes.
I mean, it's an idea.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. But
Here it's politics.
having said this, to me, my perspective of Hamas and what they are capable of, the ideology to me doesn't say very much about what they will do, or what they might do, or what they would be capable of doing. Yeah, and so I think we should move on from the charter and also say something then about the new leadership, because it's also, to me, a misunderstanding of what's going on in Hamas. So if the new charter would definitely be, to me, a proof of that Hamas has flexibility, is still remains a group that is still vivid, and it's not a dying dinosaur, but it's actually still the pink elephant in the room. With being able to get together to agree on this document, Hamas showed that the institutional workings inside works, that they are able to agree on one idea on the inside. It says something about the energy and the strength of the organization. So, new charter, signal of flexibility and pragmatism. New leadership. So we have, first of all, the replacement of Khaled Meshal and Ismail Haniyeh coming into power. Many people say, so Ismail Haniyeh, that must be a proof of flexibility and pragmatism. I don't agree. To me, Ismail Haniyeh, 10 years ago, he was one of the pragmatists in Hamas. He was one of the instigators of Hamas getting into politics, to the elections in 2006 and so. But during this time, Ismail Haniyeh lived the situation in Gaza. During this time, Ismail Haniyeh radicalized. He's not the same person today that he was in 2006. Now, looking into the eyes of Ismail Haniyeh today compared to 2010, when I first came to Gaza, it's a different guy. They are more black and they are more cold, his eyes today. And I would say, from for an Israeli assessment on what Ismail Haniyeh means to Israel, is that on the eve of a war between Israel and Gaza, on the eve of an escalating tension, if you compare the decision of Ismail Haniyeh compared to Khaled Meshal, what they would make in terms of decision, Ismail Haniyeh, I say, would be a little bit more likely to go into a war than Khaled Meshal would be. To this extent, to this high extent, for me, Ismail Haniyeh has radicalized. So, in terms of the new leadership, for Ismail Haniyeh, Hamas has definitely moved in a less pragmatic or a less positive direction. Then you have a changed leadership in Gaza as well, right? So Yahya Sinwar was let out of prison when they came when all of the Gilad Shalit exchanged prisoners came to Beit Lahia in buses, or Beit Hanun. you know, they were all greeted by their families, but Yahya Sinwar was picked up by a black Mercedes. I mean, he was already, when he was in prison, he was head of Gaza in the prisons, Hamas. And he was already a leader when he came to Gaza. And then he just rose in ranks directly coming back. But Yahya Sinwar, so he is a military man. He was a completely uncompromising, cold-blooded person from the biographies as we know him, but is today a politician and a flexible politician. So he has moved in the other direction, different to Ismail Haniyeh. I wouldn't call Yahya Sinwar a pragmatist, because pragmatist has a positive flavor. I would call him a flexible leader. He has shown by a lot of things, by talking to the Halam, by talking to Egypt and so on, that Sinwar is open to doing things which earlier would have been a bit taboo for a Hamas leader in Gaza. But Yahya Sinwar also contributes to a lot of negative things in Hamas, because Yahya Sinwar is a military man. For me, also with a military experience or military perspective, you know, I recognize how he thinks about democratic processes and so on. He believes in action. He thinks that he's a practical man. He thinks that we need to do things. You know? We don't need to wait for the Shura Council to write their protocol of their latest meeting. We need to do things now. And it's more important to make decisions than to actually anchor it in the different parts of Hamas. So there have been coming reports for the past months about how Yahya Sinwar is managing the Gaza part of Hamas. And it's a deinstitutionalization process where he doesn't care any longer about when the Shura Council is meeting, what the different advisors are saying. He is making his decisions based on that he thinks that he knows best and that he is the supreme leader in Gaza. So this is a negative development. It means that Hamas, that was originally or before internally a more or less democratic organization in terms of decision making in elections and things like that, with the system of different Shura councils, is no longer that, at least developing into. So this is problematic. Then there is also a new foreign policy of Hamas with Haniyeh and with Sinwar. The new foreign policy, they call it the zero problems policy. And what they're saying, and you can also kind of read it from the charter, is that Hamas is now focusing on Israel, the Palestinian cause, and not caring, wants to eliminate everything that is problems with other countries. So we can see now that Hamas is trying to mend its ties with Iran, even mend its ties with Syria. And with Hezbollah and Lebanese forces or Lebanese factions, it has already happened, but ongoing with Iran and Syria. It does not mean that Hamas is gravitating back to Iran. It does not mean that Hamas will open its political office in Damascus again or anything like that. But it's an effect of this zero problems policy. And then, of course, there is the new approach to, or the new relations with Egypt. The situation to Hamas now, as they can see it, is that there will be no development with Israel. The borders will be more and more sealed now with the new security barrier, even underground. So the only way out from Gaza is Egypt. And the new leadership in Hamas is flexible to the extent that they say, we don't care about how the new Egypt is treating the Muslim Brotherhood. We don't care about how they've been treating Hamas up till now. We need them. So we will talk to them, and all of Hamas, all the 4 different parts of Hamas have now agreed on that Hamas should form a strategic alliance with Egypt. So this will continue, and from Israel's point of view, this is great. Israel doesn't want anything to do with Gaza. Israel doesn't want the humanitarian catastrophe that Gaza is on its shoulders. So Egypt wanted to come in here, take control or be the supervisor of Gaza, take over from Qatar, who has been trying to establish its role in Gaza up till now. This is good to Israel. So the third thing, the third thing, the new foreign policy for Hamas is also a proof of that Hamas is flexible. And then comes the situation that we're in now with what's going on with the other Palestinian factions. And so up till July, we thought that Hamas was moving towards the Dahlan and not caring anything about Ramallah. And Hamas, what Dahlan is delivering, or first of all, I mean, what does Dahlan represent to Hamas? Well, Dahlan was the one who tortured Hamas members in jail, or saw to that everything bad that happened to Hamas 2007 and onwards, shaved their beards, kept them for unlimited period of time in dungeons, in the interrogation centers and so on. So he represents all this, and then all of a sudden Hamas is open to talk to him. If this is not a sign of flexibility, I don't know what is a sign of flexibility. So Dahlan comes with money from the United Arab Emirates. You all know that. And the significant part here, what's interesting now, is not the Fatah-Hamas reconciliation, because it will not happen. What's interesting now is that Dahlan is coming with money from the United Arab Emirates. Egypt is agreeing to his communication and interaction with Hamas. Probably because Egypt is positive to Dahlan getting a bigger role in Palestinian politics later on. So perhaps they're hoping for that. But what Dahlan is doing, and this is the big thing going on right now, which hasn't been written about very much, is that the social problems that were between the Fatah and the Hamas victims of or families of the victims from the 2007 infighting, that was the big, the outstanding compensation payments between these two sides. That was the big obstacle to Fatah-Hamas reconciliation. And now Hamas, or Dahlan, is actually fixing this. So he has gotten these 700 families, both Fatah and Hamas families, to agree to get $50,000 each, and then end all claims. So this is Islah. This is this is the social reconciliation. And he has also gotten Hamas to go to the same Musalaha meetings and apologize. So you have Hamas leaders apologizing, Dahlan men bringing the money, and then all of a sudden we don't have this obstacle to Fatah and Hamas approaching each other any longer. So then some would say, oh, perhaps so, then maybe there will be.
But it's
Every-
just on the local level. I mean, the
Exactly.
questions are still open mainly in the West Bank. And
Yes.
the refugee camps beside of Khan Yunis and Gaza. It's still open in the north.
Yeah, exactly. So this is true, but there is also one other main obstacle to Fatah Hamas reconciliation, which will lead to that it will not happen, and this is of course that. So a reconciliation would need Hamas leaving its authority to Fatah and to Fatah security forces to some extent, at least in Gaza. And this kind of security reform within the Palestinian camp, well, it's just not possible. And it was not possible, I mean, it was the outstanding question in the Cairo talks of 2011 and the agreement in 2011. So everything was agreed on. Unity government, who was supposed to be prime minister, everything, but not how to reorganize the security forces and how to keep security or to work on security together. And it's still as a big problem. And of course, since 2007, there will not be cooperation between the Fatah security forces and the Hamas security forces. So I think what I'll do is that I'll stop here and I'll open up for questions, so we'll have a bit more of interaction.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brenner. It was very interesting. I think I will first give Ido Zelkovic the right as a discussant to start with. Please have a
Yeah,
seat,
okay, thanks.
Thank you, Soli. There are a couple of points that I would like to elaborate on them. I will start with the new charter. I must say that I don't see this charter, the change in the charter, just as a cosmetic change. I would say that I will agree that Hamas is starting a new tactical maneuver. But on the other hand, this tactical maneuver, as I understand it until now, its main aim is not to replace the old charter. In this sense, I will adopt the Mahmoud Azhar approach and not the Khaled Mash'al new political discourse. I must say from my own personal experience with Hamas affiliated supporters, that for them the old charter is more than a political document. And if you analyzing it from a textual perspective, and I heard it from Palestinians, they see the combination of Quranic quotes and stories from the Hadith alongside with the political message as one combined structure. Reading the new Wathika, and this is Mitak, not a Wathika, the old charter is Mitak and the new policy document is Wathika, you see that all of the religious signs are out of it. That means that by far Hamas is more a flexible movement as people sees it. The new charter, I think, has been designed in a way that gives Hamas more flexibility than ever. But as a religious movement, I don't think that they can turn their back to the old charter, mainly because of its framework. On the perspective of Hamas' new leadership and their approach to the world, I think that you got it right in your presentation. The main change is that today Hamas leadership is by far more local than ever. The new leadership is centralized in the Gaza Strip, and the power base in the movement shifted once again from El Kharij into the Gaza Strip, from the diaspora, from the Shatat, to the Gaza Strip. That means that Hamas new leadership is more engaged with the local population. They are more committed to the Gaza Strip daily basic needs, and that's what brought the main change in their foreign policy approach from Iran as the hinterland of the military wing to Egypt as a supporter of daily basic needs. To the Dahlan Sinwar affair, over here we see that once again local identities in the Middle East are rising up on the expense of the ultra ideologies. Between Sinwar and Dahlan there is a local alliance based on their origin. They are both from the Khan Yunis refugee camps. The families grow up together in the same area, and furthermore, Sinwar wasn't back then in the Gaza Strip when Dahlan went after his friends. There is no personal bad blood between of the two. As politicians, that gave them the opportunity to build a new framework of understanding or a new relationship based on personal trust. To the question of is Hamas is trying to change its political understanding of Middle East politics. I don't think that Hamas wants to break out from the Muslim Brotherhood. I don't think that Hamas actually wants to cut the ideological ties with the Muslim Brotherhood. The thing that I see is that Hamas is ready to put the religious and ideological commitments aside in order to supply better life conditions to the Gazans. And the new policy document giving them this spare of reflexivity. When I'm looking back to Hamas inception festivals of 2013, 2014, on these occasions, I remember Hamas sheikhs giving bay'ah on the stage, not to the political leadership of the Gaza Strip, not to Khalid Mash'al, and not to Hamas as NID, but to the Muslim Brotherhood as, let's say, an ideological umbrella. And therefore, I don't think that Hamas can cut those historical ties, but I will definitely agree that in this in this tension that we have in this built tension that we have in Hamas between religious identity and national identity, I think that Hamas in the last 2 or 3 years is moving slowly, step by step, and from the ideological religious base into the national sphere, and that's also reflected in the new charter, which for the first time Hamas described itself not as an Islamic national movement, but as a national Islamic movement. And we should not take this change lightly. So those are my...
Thank you, Udo. Please.
To take up on your last point, do you think it would be possible to compare this localization of Hamas's agenda in the past few years to what happened with Ennahda in Tunisia, that they declared, I think it was mid-2015 or so, no, mid-2016, about a year ago, that they declared that they're no longer Islamist, but they're Muslim Democrats, something which is more local, focused on Tunisian politics, on Islamic identity but not religiosity, something which has to do more with culture and less with ideological constraints. I mean, is it comparable, in your opinion, to think of Hamas? I mean, and of course, there are major differences. I mean, the Tunisian and Palestinian contexts are different, and also in Hamas, you do have the concept of Muqawma and the Al-Qassam brigades, which you don't see in Nahda. But in terms of its relationship between, or the tension between religion and politics, religion and national identity, do you think that there's any point for comparison here?
Yeah. So of course there is a possibility to compare the two, and there are some similarities. But to me, Hamas is much more not restricted to its ideology.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with what Ido is saying, referring back to ideology and to links to the Muslim Brotherhood and so on all the time. But my question is, so of course it's still there in the background, but the question is, when we as analysts are assessing what will be the next move by Hamas, what will it do next? Is there any use to think about what it says in the charter, what it says in the texts? No. My argument is no. My argument is that Hamas is as close to as possible a completely limitless political animal, in that it will do what it takes. I mean, as long as Hamas feels that it can gain from the situation, in some sense, it will do it. It doesn't matter if it has to reconciliate with the guy who was the most hated among the security forces in Hamas. They can do it. And when you ask people who have been tortured by Dahalan's guys and Mashrawi and these guys, you know, when you ask them, can you really accept this, that your leadership is now talking to these guys? They will say, but it's just it's politics. It's that they accept it. They agree it on the inside. That's quite amazing that even people who are victims of these things, that they are still on the train to accept it. It says something about Hamas as a unit, as a political animal, much more than it is an Islamist or a Islamic organization. I think.
But there are still certain dogmatic issues, taboos, if you want, that they don't give up. We don't see a change towards Israel, because Israel is a taboo.
Yeah.
So there are certain aspects of ideology that remain in place, but there are certain other aspects, probably outside of Israel, that they can move around, because nothing is written in the
exactly. So
in their
document.
So I mean, this
in
is
their document that is related with whether to talk to Tahlan or not to Tahlan. This is politics.
Yes, and so this is important to say.
This is the pragmatism.
Yeah, and this is important to say that. So, arguing what I'm arguing, well, there are still things that contradict what I say. That there are certain things that are taboo, but perhaps this will change.
Yes.
And
Well, thank you for your both theoretical and up-to-date talk. Just to join this discussion, I think we should better conceptualize how we think. What do you mean? Is it cosmetics or not cosmetics? I mean, your approach reminds me a little bit Guning's approach. I mean, you continuing in terms of saying Hamas not as an essential organization, but something that moves, and but he uses the social theory approach. And then I think if we would see the new charter as a new framing of Hamas, that is conditions by the constraints and opportunities that it faces. So I think you better put together, yes, what is this charter? Is it just something to please others? Is it something real? I think this, in politics you don't use this. In politics everything goes, yeah? Also in Lebanon, so Said Hariri can make coalition with the people who killed his father. So this happens all the time. But if you think about it, what are the opportunities? First of all, the constraints that Hamas has today, and the opportunities. I think you will understand much of what you see in the charter.
Yeah.
Now, another point I was thinking about all this that you described and Ido described about all these changes. It reminds me of another theory that came up in the last years, and this is this concept of post-Islamism. Of Asif Bayat. Well, first Olivier Roy started with it, and Asif Bayat. So you see that Muslim Brothers also have a new charter, which also speaks about all kinds of. So of course, circumstances in Gaza are very different. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure anymore. From Egypt, maybe it's the same. But anyway, you see that many, including in Iran, where he conceived of this concept with Khatami, with what happened in Iran, and you see that many organizations, each in its own way, starts to speak about freedom and democracy and national identity and women
and a civil state.
And
Dawla Madaniya.
All the good things. But I think maybe Hamas, in its own way, in the conditions of there, it's also something of being influenced of what is happening around.
Okay, so I agree with you, and I think from my perspective, post-Islamism, or the idea of post-Islamism, and the kind of surprise to us analysts that, so now these Islamist movements, they are doing things that we didn't see them doing before, we didn't expect them to. Well, to me, this is a proof that, so why did we expect them to do this? Because we look at Islamism and what we expect, we will look at the Islamic values and, for me, the theory, what we expect these movements to do in practice. And I'm saying that, well, I think we have overemphasized the Islamic character of these movements. They are not about Islam to a very great extent, they are about politics. And we should view them and analyze them as political animals and political actors, and not primarily as Islamic groups.
But the framing.
But the framing is
Islamic.
very interesting. Yeah.
Framing.
The framing is Islamic.
So they
But
don't
the
want to
question is what the
establish
framing means.
They don't want to
in
establish Islamic State?
Who?
Groups like Hamas. They don't have any intention. I mean, Islamic Brotherhood in general, but we are talking about Hamas. They don't have a.
Well,
according to what you say, the Islamist part is only a tactic in order to get a political position.
yeah, but so if you ask Hamas, if you ask this
If
question,
that's the tactic, then I think they are on the wrong horse. I
But
mean,
so-
wrong tactic.
but so if you ask this question to a Hamas leader, are you in the end going to establish an Islamic state? Is this what you want? They will not say no, but they will say yes.
Yes,
But the people should decide. This is about we are starting with changing the individual, the Islamic values of the individual.
This shows
And
that
then-
they are Muslim brothers.
Yes,
It's
but
dawah.
this
They're
is
the
the-
dawah.
Yeah.
But okay,
approach.
but so this is what they say, and in the end, if you look at how they have governed Gaza, it actually,
Looks
I
like
mean,
it.
they didn't use anything more. They didn't implement any Islamic things. It just
That's right.
became secular and authoritarian and
They
crap.
tried in the beginning to Islamize the public sphere, but when they felt the rejection of the society, they
yeah.
decided
They stopped.
to stop it. That was the moment when the Salafia
Yeah, because they're not Daesh.
starts to rose up.
Yeah,
At the reaction to it.
Yes,
The-
that's right.
yeah, yeah.
outflanking them from the Islamic
Yes,
direction.
Professor Cooper-Smith, please.
Well, thank you for all your insights and interpretations. Let me begin with the term cosmetic, which I don't know, there were already some utterances here that, raised questions about it, but what I mean is that these charters, and we have had a number of them. I happened to have been one of the attendants of Yosafat Akavi's first ever seminar on the PLO, when we, I think, half of the time analyzed the charter of the PLO. Just look, what happened since then. But these charters are made by, let's say, the ideologists and the leaders and the foremen and so on. Now, what do you discover, or have you discovered anything since we know about the new Wathika? About the reactions in the social media, for instance, to the contents of the new charter. That's I think, much more important than whether we think whether it's cosmetic or not. That's where it must come from the public. Let's say students, or I don't know, whoever is using Facebook and so on. So this is one thing. Now, one question, I think we sometimes focus a lot on what Hamas is saying about future relations with Israel, how they will handle that situation. But I'm equally interested in what they say about the West Bank. Is there still an aspiration that at a certain point there will be elections on the West Bank? They will conquer the leadership of the West Bank. Do they see themselves potentially as the leaders not only of Gaza but of the entire Palestinian country? And thirdly, it's connected, is about the grassroots. You mentioned before that there are certain tendencies in research that concentrate on ideology. And you said that you are very much interested in what people think and so on. Now, I'm really interested to know what they in fact think about the whole business of electricity in recent months, or which is much more important in my eyes and mostly neglected in our literature, is taxation. This taxation is a determinant of their remaining in power, their governance. That's what it is. What do they think about these points?
They, as in people of Gaza, or Hamas?
Well, that's because you have been there. You have been talking to the people. So how important are these things in comparison to the texts and the written declarations and so on that we always seem to study? Now we have a chance now to meet you and to hear firsthand how often these topics came up.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with this. A bit.
One short question.
But it's difficult to remember all the questions. Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, when Hamas took over Gaza, eventually ruling Gaza and staying in power in Gaza to Hamas became the same as the movement staying strong and in control of the situation. So it also meant that everything bad that comes with governance, demanding tax from people, diverting electricity from normal people's needs to government needs or to military needs or so on, it became okay because it's for the greater cause.
Do you really think that?
Yes. And so
it's not that whether he believes that.
No, I don't believe it. But so the Hamas perspective changed with the governance of Gaza. So even though they have one ear to the ground, and of course Hamas is sensitive to the grassroots, of course, there are things that are. I mean, the survival of the movement is more important than listening to dissenting voices from below. And so taxing people in more heavy way is then okay. And even though people complain, it takes a lot of complaints for Hamas to retract from this.
Taxation is
Taxation.
interface. You don't only levy taxes, but also use them to do certain things.
That's true. So, yeah, so then along my logic, using them for military things instead of humanitarian things would then be more okay. Yeah, so this is with the electricity. Hamas's position on the West Bank. I think it's interesting here to see and to hear. So I spoke to some Hamas people about, because I was quite confused about what happened with first approaching Dahalan and then all of a sudden back to Ramallah. And they said the political address of Fatah for us has remained Ramallah and Abbas all the time. That we are dealing with Dahalan is just because we can gain something out from it now, and it's good for different reasons, and Egypt wants it.
And to make pressure on Abbas.
And exactly. So the whole reconciliation now should be seen as a game towards Abbas, where Abbas is all of a sudden paid into a corner, where Hamas made one concession, which didn't mean anything in practice, dismantling the administrative committee. It's just a formal structure. And then Hamas needs to reciprocate. Abbas needs to reciprocate. So it's a game with Abbas, but it's still, it's not that, what I want to say is not, Hamas did not abandon their interest in the West Bank. They're still interested in the West Bank, and they're still interested in seeing the PLO as the main body for the Palestinians and the existence of the PA and so.
Yeah, but now that they don't oppose the PLO as a framework, I'm asking about the longer term perspective.
Yeah.
Do they see themselves potentially as the leadership of a, let's say, united or combined Palestinian entity?
I don't know, because I
Do
never.
they know?
No, that's the thing, because I don't know, and I always try to squeeze out everything from the people that I talk to, and I never get an answer to this. So to me, it seems, from the answers that I get, to me it seems that this vision is not clear. It's not really decided on yet, or it's too far away for them to think about.
But you describe them as a political group.
Yeah.
Not Islam, it's political.
Yeah.
So they have political aspiration. What do you have as a political aspiration to go to get to control?
I don't know.
How can it be not so clear?
That's actually connected to my question.
Okay, so let's take this.
There is one important figure that unfortunately is absent in the room, and we're talking, of course, about Khaled Mashal.
Yeah.
Trying to analyze and understand what is the new Hamas leadership and to which directions they want to go. We focused more about Ismail Haniyeh as the head of the political bureau, and on Yahya Sinwar as the Hamas leader in the Gaza Strip. If you will ask me, I will tell you that Khaled Mashal is not retired. He don't want to go to pension. He's still young, in his 50s, and he have a lot of ambitions. I really do think that in the end of the day, and we see it today to the framework of the Fatah-Hamas reconciliation process, Hamas is crystal clear saying that they want to be integrated into the PLO framework, and Khaled Mashal sees himself as the potential leader of the PLO. Therefore, now is not part of the official leadership of Hamas, because he wants to run for candidacy or to see himself as a candidate, independent candidate that can go head in head with Abbas or Barghouti or Dakhlan for the next position of the PLO head with the support of Hamas. with the support of the
Exactly.
independence and with the support of the Palestinian
Yeah.
Shatat, with the Palestinian diaspora, which is now becoming more and more important political player.
Yeah,
In the
I agree. And I'm-
One second. Mu'in Rabani interviewed him for a Journal of Palestine Studies 5 years ago, and Mu'in Rabani told me that he was much more moderate than he thought himself.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
In that,
Yeah. No, but I mean, okay, so we can say a lot about Meshal as a person. I mean,
I'm asking myself those questions.
to-
I don't have clear answers.
to me, Meshal, I have never met him, but to me, he seems as a very cuddly, nice person to talk to. You know, I'm sure that he had. I mean, being the leader of Hamas, he has blood on his hands, of course. So, in this sense, he's a killer. But what you are telling us is more or less the Hamas view. I mean, they want this, of course. The people in the Palestinian camp that wants Meshal to rise to lead a role in more broadly in Palestinian politics. And here I think is the problem to Hamas. Hamas is also thinking that sometime we will be recognized by the international community and they will come and talk to us. Hamas has not really realized how alienated they are in a very deep way. Hamas is a terrorist group to such a, understood as a terrorist group from the outside to such a great extent that United States will never allow, many states, the international community will never put Khalid Meshal as top of a short list of who should be a leader of Palestine. It will just not happen. Then there are so many others that will be more suitable for that. And I mean, then Hamas could try as much as they want to be seen as more pragmatic, even though if they will relinquish their arms, still Meshal would not be.
Therefore, he's now out of the picture.
To me, yes, in this sense. But yeah, I mean, he's middle-aged and he's still working, so we'll see what happens with him.
I have a question on the West Bank, a follow-up question to Professor Bushman, but from a somewhat different direction. Do you think from what you had, the conversations with Hamas members and leaders, do you think that they still feel that they're competent? I mean, not in terms of what they want for the West Bank, but in terms of do they still feel that they're competent enough to govern after, their less than successful experiment in the Gaza Strip? I mean, they couldn't deliver the goods, and I'm sure that had they had an election today in the Gaza Strip, then I'm not sure if they would have lost, but I'm sure they would have received less votes for Hamas than compared to 2006. So, haven't they been, scorched to a sense by their experience in the Gaza Strip, by their failed experiment in government? Have they learned any lessons for it? Are they more humble? Are they more modest in their aspirations? Do you have any kind of lessons learned experiences from them?
Yeah, but so Hamas is painfully aware of that they were completely unprepared when they came to power, and they made a lot of mistakes, and they don't have the right knowledge and to manage it and so on. When you came to visit Hamas in government in 2006, 2007, you would come to an empty hallway. When you came to the ministry offices, you would come to an empty hallway, and at the end of this hallway, with all the offices, there would be all the shoes outside one room, and you would go there and you look in, you will have all the people there praying. They were unprepared to govern, they didn't know how to do it, and they were asking a higher power how to do it. But at the same time, along the logic that I was talking about before, with the kind of a fused identity to Hamas with Gaza, they don't see any alternative to clinging on to controlling Gaza, because leaving Gaza would mean ending itself.
No, I'm referring more to the West Bank. If they think that they're up to the job of leading the West Bank.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Brenner, for a very interesting issue that affects us every day here. And thank you for Dr. Ido Zelkovic, who made this initiative, and for his being a discussant, and all of you who during this vacation and the holiday you came here and attended. We didn't expect such a number, so that's maybe for yeah. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you.